Yeah, she's trying to get the machine
Where's the
on.
shirt? Where's the shirt?
Well, I think she pressed it. Did you get it on?
But the problem is,
We're ready.
Ready? All right.
like, today I just feel good about it. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Something's still there.
I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the Park Ridge City Council for Monday, June 19th. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Maloney. Present. Alderman Moran. Here. Alderman Melissus.
Here.
Alderman Wilkening. Here. Alderman Schubert.
Here.
Alderman Melodosian.
Here?
Alderman Bazooka.
Here.
Alderman Joyce.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Now I'd like to have Logan from Troop 50 come on up. He's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, so everyone can rise and he'll lead us. We have 4 sets of minutes to approve this evening. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes from June 12th, 2017.
Second.
Any questions or corrections? Audience, any questions or comments on these minutes? And back to council for final comment. We can do a voice vote, right? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve the regular city council meeting minutes from June 5th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Questions or corrections? Seeing none, out to the audience. And back to council. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Again, thank you. Next, I'll entertain a motion to approve the committee of the whole meeting minutes from May 22nd, 2017.
So moved.
Thank you. Any questions or corrections? Seeing none, out to the audience. And back to council. I'll do a voice vote on this as well. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Those carry as well. Thank you.
Abstain.
Who is that? Who is abstained? Two.
We were not president.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the budget workshop on April 12th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Questions or corrections? Seeing none, now to the audience. And back to council for final comment. We'll do a voice vote on these. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those,
Abstain. I wasn't on the board.
we have 2 abstentions?
No.
Gail and Marty.
Okay, so, but it passes nonetheless. Thank you. Next, we have reports of city officials. First up is the mayor's report. I'm here just to report that I have appointed Alderman Joyce as the council liaison to the Historic Preservation and the Community Health Commission. I appreciate Alderman Joyce stepping up to fill those positions. Roger has been handling Historic Preservation, and I've been doing Community Health, so those will be 2 good commissions for you. I know there are some Historic Preservation things this evening, so you guys may, Roger, you will still may lead that a little bit, because Marty's not going to know.
Right, they're on consent, so.
Okay, all right, very good. Any questions on that? Thank you, Alderman Joyce.
I'm happy to be the liaison for the 2 best commissions in the council.
Second.
Next, I would ask for a motion to approve adjournment to closed session after the regular city council meeting pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C1 to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees.
So moved.
Second, thank you. Any questions on this? Seeing none. Just to clarify for the audience, we're continuing to have our conversations about the city manager. So that's what we'll be discussing this evening. Any questions from the audience? Seeing none, back to council for comment. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Alderman Moran.
Yes.
Alderman Melissus.
Yes.
Wilkening.
Yes.
Schubert.
Yes.
Melodosian.
Yes?
Mazuka.
Yes.
And Joyce. Motion passes.
Thank you. Those are the last two items I had listed under the mayor's report, but I did have something that I got in the mail this week, which, Wayne, I wanted to ask you about here. Normally, we have a kind of a standing thing for legislative update as it relates to Springfield primarily. We don't have one here this evening, but there was a letter, and I believe you got it as well, which says, talks about how if there is not a budget, it's an intergovernmental agreement for routine maintenance of state routes, talks about how things will cease to, the maintenance will stop. And I guess my question is that a problem, and how does that impact the work that's going on Talcott?
Well, that could stop as of June 30th, the Talcott, but they're not doing any more grinding right now at all. They're just making sure the service is okay in case that were to occur. As to the maintenance of our streets, our state routes, we get paid somewhere around $150,000 a year to snowplow and maintain potholes, broken pieces of curb. We would continue to do so, we would just do it without the revenue.
So, short-term, what we can all expect then is if there is no budget by the 30th of June, then the work on Talcott will come to a halt.
To a halt.
The question I would have is, right now, when the contractors stop at the end of the day or stop at the end of a Friday for the weekend, they kind of leave their equipment in place. If this is a somewhat longer hiatus, will they take their equipment off? As an example, I live over on the kind of the end of Talcott as it approaches the Chicago border, and I know they parked, the contractor parked their trucks, and there was some heavy equipment on Washington, right where it kind of curves into Talcott Place there, and it was fine, and it was safe, and there were cones, indicating that it was there, but I guess what I'm asking is, would we expect that to be left the same way?
It's going to depend on the news coming from the state, whether or not this is really going to happen. And if it does happen, if there's a complete head-to-head meltdown where it's going to be a long time, I'm sure they'd move their equipment. They have other places to go. And I don't think they want to have their equipment in spots where they can be vandalized or anything can happen to them. They'd probably take them back to their yards or to some other construction site.
And then I guess the last question, and I'll open up here, is if this delay were to go on for an extraordinary length of time, and again, we're in Illinois, we haven't had a budget in 2 years, what are our options? What do we do with a street that's kind of maybe 80% done?
There's options we have. I mean, we could finish the job for them. I wouldn't recommend that. I would just sit back and let this, find out what happens with the legislature at this moment. I think that's a question you can ask us a month from now. But at the moment, it is safe. It's that first coat was down, the first lift. And again, they're not going to grind anymore to make any problems, so we'll see what we're left with on June 30th, and hopefully this doesn't occur.
Okay. The only thing I would ask is this, if, as we get closer to June 30th, if it's looking like that's going to happen, if you could proactively reach out to the contractor, and I know we have the project manager and some names of people, just to make sure that if they do kind of stop, that they do so in a safe manner.
We talk to them every day, so, we'll have a real good inkling, and they're going to have one also, believe me, so.
I just would prefer if they're gonna be gone, if this work's gonna stop for a few weeks or a month or two, that they take their equipment with them and bring it back when they're ready to start. That would be my preference, and I'm sure the preference of the neighbors.
And if their thoughts are that it's only going to last a week and it's kind of just a head-butting thing for our Illinois legislative branch, they'd probably leave those on site for that long. Because it takes time to mobilize something like that, so.
I understand, but if I would just hate for it weeks to stretch into months and have equipment sitting on our
I
streets.
doubt that would happen.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions on this? And I apologize for jumping into Public Works, I just hadn't had that letter in front of me.
I'm not offended.
Okay, very good. That concludes the mayor's report. City Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve I move to approve adjournment to closed session after the regular city council meeting to approve closed session minutes from the June 5th, 2017 session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2C21.
Second.
Thank you for approving minutes.
Yes. Any questions on this? Seeing none, out to the audience. This will be something that we do at the conclusion of the meeting. Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, back to council for final comment.
Alderman Melissus,
Yes.
Alderman Wilkening,
Yes.
Schubert,
Yes.
Meladosian,
Yes?
Mazuka,
Yes,
Joyce,
Yes.
Moran.
Yes.
Motion passes.
that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City Attorney? Thank you. City Clerk?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
City Manager?
Just one item to let you know that the regular city council meeting on July 3rd has been canceled due to the Independence Day holiday. And we're going to have a special city council meeting on July the 10th, immediately preceding the Public Works, Public Safety COW to handle that business from the 3rd. And so we won't have a city council meeting the week of July 3rd.
Any questions? Makes sense to me. All right, very good. Anything else? Thanks, Joe. Next is the consent agenda. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of those items unless an alderman so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Tonight's consent agenda is as follows. Under Historic Preservation, number 1, approve a final reading of ordinance designating 721 North Prospect Avenue, the Solomon Cottage, as a Park Ridge landmark. Number 2, approve final reading of ordinance designating 733 North Prospect Avenue, Wohlers and Emery, as a Park Ridge landmark. Under Public Works Committee, approve a purchase order for insulating the city council chambers to Thermoseal Lakeside in the amount of $12,745. Number 3, approve a purchase order for mud jacking to AAA Concrete Raising Company in the amount of $15,750. Number 4, approve the contract for thermoplastic pavement marking with Superior Road Striping Incorporated and a purchase order in the amount of $45,000. Number 5, approve a one-year extension to the contract for emergency water main and sewer work services, PW-FY17-01, to DeMayo Brothers Incorporated. Number 6, approve a purchase order for 2 riding mowers to Russo's Power Equipment Incorporated in the amount of $15,790. Number 7, approve a one-year extension of the contracts for water meter and accessories, PW-FY17-04, to Midwest Meter Incorporated and Water Resources. Number 8, approve the contracting for upfitting of 1 Ford F-450 vehicle, PW-FY18-05, to Monroe Truck Equipment in the amount of $45,051. Number 9, approve a purchase order for 1 backhoe breaker to McCann Industries in the amount of $18,050. Under Public Safety, approve a purchase order for 1 2017 Ford Explorer Interceptor AWD to Curry Motors Frankfurt Incorporated in the amount of $28,574. Number 2, approve a purchase order for 1 2017 Ford Taurus Interceptor to Morrow Brothers Ford in the amount of $25,880. Under Finance and Budget Committee, approve fiscal year 17 warrants for the period ending June 14th, 2017 in the amount of $395,809.49, reviewed by Alderman Wilkening. Number 2, approve fiscal year 18 warrants for period ending June 15th, 2017 in the amount of $2,735,663.91, reviewed by Alderman Wilkening. Number 3, approve final reading of an ordinance opting out of the Cook County minimum wage and sick leave mandates.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull out one item.
Yes,
for
Nick.
Discussion. It's on item G6.
That is the riding mowers?
Correct.
Okay, so that has been removed from the consent agenda. Anything else to be removed? Any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll go out to the audience. If you were here to comment or ask a question on anything that I just read, with the exception of the riding lawnmowers, now would be the time to ask that question, because we will not be stopping at its normal sequence on the agenda. We'll be going right by it. So if you're here to ask a question or make a comment on something that I just read, now would be the time. Seeing none, back to council for final comment. And roll call.
Sir. Alderman Wilkening,
Yes.
Alderman Schubert,
Yes.
Meladosian,
Yes.
Mazuka,
Yes.
Joyce,
Yes.
Moran,
Yes.
Melissus.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next is citizens who wish to address city council on a non-agenda item. So we're here to speak on something not on the agenda. Now would be the time. That's you.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak a little bit here. Thank you, Mayor, and all the aldermen. I'm here to talk about the Taste of Park Ridge.
If you
My name,
if
right?
you want to give your name and
You got
address
it.
if you choose. But
I
yes,
am
thank
Mel
you.
Fillins. I live over on Prairie.
Thank you.
And I am the chairman of the Taste of Park Ridge Committee. So I'm here to talk about the Taste of Park Ridge. It's coming up less than a month away. July 13, 14, 15. It is the annual festival that we have here every year right over on Summit by the library. It is going to be, as always, one of the most fun events that I attend and part of every year. I really enjoy that event, I think, as most of us in the room do. It is a really good time. We've got a lot of great food, a lot of great entertainment, beer for those who enjoy it. And this year we've got even more. One of the things that I'm most proud of, and I know that some of my other council members in the orange shirts in the back that are also very proud of it, is the local flavor of this event. It is entirely run by local volunteers, including real estate agents from various real estate agencies in town. We've got, they help out, they send hundreds of people, and then we've got the Kiwanians and the Rotarians, and the newcomers all pitch in. We've got local entertainment from things that the Park District offers. They're on display all day long on the stage and the Family Fun Zone here in Hodges Park. And we've got bands, local bands, like a high school band called State 56 is going to be on the agenda today, or this year. And we've got a very local favorite band, Ginger Road, will be playing one of the evenings. So take a look, look at our Facebook page, and you'll see our entertainment lineup. And it's a food fest, first and foremost. So we've got 25 food vendors, most of which come from Park Ridge, including new ones this year: Holtz, Harp and Fiddle, the Agostinos, Evu, which is the catering company associated with the Fresco, Hula Hands, Smiling Dogs. So those are all new ones this year that are all local, and all the new food vendors this year that are taking place, the ones that dropped out for whatever reason, are all local Park Ridge restaurants. So it's a great way to showcase our town. People come from all over. I personally invite all of the people in the Horseshoe to help us sell beer on Thursday night, which you often do. So please come out and enjoy the good times.
Wait, we're supposed to be selling it?
Yeah, you can't just hand it away, Alderman Moran.
And Mel, maybe you said this, and I apologize if I didn't hear. How many years has the Taste been going to Park
Oh,
Ridge?
geez. Well,
you didn't know there'd be a quiz, right?
Yeah, the big quiz. I don't know. Over a decade? Do we know over 2 decades? It started as a small event behind in the alley behind the Pickwick.
Near Giappo's.
Years and years ago, near Giappo's, where Dean's dad started it there, and with Dave Iglo. So it's been a long time event, and it's grown and grown, and it's turned into something that's really special. So
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
coming, and we'll do what we can on the weather for that weekend.
yeah, keep the rain.
Do what we can. If it rains, you can blame us. Everybody does. Any other citizens wishing to address council on non-agenda item? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda to reports of boards, commissions, and committees, and we start off with Planning, Zoning Board of Appeals, Alderman Wilkeny.
I attended the last meeting. There was a public hearing about a special use permit for the Perfect Workout at 444 Northwest Highway. That one without a hitch, and there was another iteration of the plans for the 1400 Higgins property that were also presented. No action, obviously. End of report.
Okay, thank you. Next is Zoning Board of Appeals, Alderman Moran.
One item this evening, I'll make a motion to approve the final reading of ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Park Ridge regarding expiration of site plan approval 17-10-TA.
Second.
Thank you. Everybody has the memo, I guess, I haven't met you yet, are you? Jim's younger brother, more handsome?
He's under 30, I'm
Yeah.
Steve Steffens.
That's right, we've talked a couple of times, so is there any, we've all been through this, we got the update last week, but is there anything additional you want to add regarding?
Not at this time, no.
Okay, excellent.
Okay. Any questions on this? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments on this particular matter? Seeing none. Back to council for final comment.
I
Yes,
guess
Alderman.
there were some questions at council, and I think Joe, and I know Jim's not here, but in terms of legally, are we doing the right thing the way we're cleaning this up, or is this gonna create other conflicts? I don't know if Julie wants to speak to that, or?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about this. I had worked with Jim when this first came up, that there was a question why certain types of zoning approvals have expiration dates and others do not. And a site plan is a zoning approval, so it's a process that goes through, the zoning code authorizes it, and they have to go through to get the zoning recommendation and get the approval. And I think there was some surprise from Jim and I that there wasn't anything in the zoning code that would say that it didn't last forever. So you didn't hold this site plan approval for 10 or 15 years. Times may change, the area may change, and I think there's a good reason to have a sunset provision for site plan approval. There already is for special use permits, and this is consistent with the special use permit, which is a 2-year time frame.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for that matter? Nothing? Okay, then roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Alderman Schubert,
Yes.
Alderman Maladosian,
Yes.
Mazuka,
Yes,
Joyce.
Early. Yes.
he says yes, too.
I'm sorry. He said,
I jumped the gun, I got nervous.
oh, I'll just put you down for
Happens to
yes,
everybody.
yes, for sure. Alderman Moran,
Yes.
Melissus,
Yes.
and Wilkening.
Yes.
All passed.
Anything else, Alderman Moran?
That concludes ZBA.
Thank you. Next would be Liquor License Review Board. There is no report this evening. We have not met, so no report. So move on to O'Hare Airport Commission. Alderman Mazuka.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, there have been some very interesting legal developments with respect to our variety of issues with O'Hare. And rather than have me give the report and probably not do a very good job of summarizing legal issues, I figured that we would actually be better served by having our chair and one of the OAC members here tonight, both of whom are attorneys and much better at this sort of stuff than I am, give a report. So with your indulgence, I'd like to give them the opportunity.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Just as a reminder, that microphone is really hard to hear, so if you could remind the speakers to be
Be
loud.
close to your mouth,
Talking
please.
to them, yeah, keep it close to your mic.
Thank you, Alderman Mazuka. A couple things for those that don't know, I'll give a plug. The OAC meetings meet every other month, the third Wednesday of the month at 7 o'clock in council chambers here. Our next meeting will be in July. Some of the questions that we always get from residents is, what are we doing looking into potential legal action that might occur for what's going on? So what we instituted late last year, I believe, were certain standing reports, and one of them are for legal update. I'll introduce Steve Judge, one of our OAC commissioners, who has undertaken that duty of keeping up on what lawsuits are going on, not just in town, but all around the country. We did have one here that had something of note that we wanted to bring to the attention of council and to the residents, and since Steve's been following it, I'll let Steve talk to the specifics of that.
So Jim's had me keep tabs on some of the cases that might be pertinent to our issues and our situation. And one that came out recently, a Bensonville case, it's kind of interesting because it was filed on behalf of individual citizens in Bensonville rather than the city itself. So there are probably some 40, 50-plus citizens filing, and based on where they live, which I would mention is directly adjacent to the airport over there in Bensonville. They're claiming these planes are coming within 100 feet of their houses, going right over, even causing them to have to trim trees. The city was out there trimming trees because of the flights going right over. They even had a situation where a jet engine fell into their swimming pool. They had to move a grade school in the area due to some of these concerns. But anyway, they filed this back in 2015 on behalf of all these citizens with 2 counts, one for unjust enrichment and one for inverse condemnation. Since then, they've gone through the motion to dismiss process. The unjust enrichment count did not survive, which that would have been the more favorable, more broad count really to apply to more of the citizens. The only count that survived was inverse condemnation, which I know concerns people, that you would have some sort of a taking and have to be compensated, have to give over their own property. However, they could also be compensated money damages in these cases. But again, that gets into something where you're having to prove loss in value of the property. So that can be difficult as well. But the important fact of that was that it did survive the motion to dismiss, which is just it's pleading sufficient facts to move on, to go through the discovery process of talk to people by taking depositions and exchange information. So it is making progress in that sense, and it's something we plan to keep an eye on and update you as it progresses.
Okay. Any questions for, yes, Mark?
Thank you. In terms of, you mentioned this was filed on behalf of individuals. Is there an opportunity for other individuals who feel like they might have been impacted by the build-out of O'Hare to join this lawsuit as individuals? Or how are they, is Bensonville looking for, or are these residents in Bensonville looking for partners to spread the cost of this litigation?
As I understand it, Alderman Mazuka, and I'm familiar with the attorney that actually filed the lawsuit, who's a former partner of mine way back when. FAIR had approached the attorney on behalf of various residents, both in our town and other towns. He wanted to keep it clean because inverse condemnation cases, I think he saw the writing on a wall as to the unjust enrichment count. Inverse condemnation cases really deal with airplanes going directly over and at, a really low level. I think he wanted to keep the lawsuit clean, and therefore he really just approached the residents on Hillside Drive. But with that said, now that it has gone beyond the pleading stage and there's going to be discovery, we're going to keep tabs on it and see what can come of it. There's a lot of these lawsuits have been just outright dismissed. This one procedurally was originally removed to federal court. They were successful in getting it back to state court. And the judge that ruled on it is a pretty tough judge too. So for it to survive a motion to dismiss, they saw they had some legs to it, at least for discovery purposes here. I am also aware that FAIR was very active in terms of supporting the pleading and giving some statistical background information that was useful, I think, in defeating the motion to dismiss. But to answer your question, it's a long way of answering it. I don't think there's any immediate ability to join this lawsuit, but it's kind of something we're going to be keeping an eye on and seeing where the opinion goes. Obviously, if it's successful, it's likely going to be appealed, and we'll be keeping eyes on that and seeing what we can do with it.
Thank you.
This question of what are the goals of the citizens that brought the suit? Did they want to be condemned? Did they want to sell their house? I mean, what is their goal?
And actually, I think that's a little bit of both in that situation. It is more of a kind of industrial type area over there in Bensonville. So some of them would be happy to honestly unload their property. But as we said, and I know the situation would be in Park Ridge where it's not really going to be people looking to get rid of their property for the price. They're just looking for the diminution and value of their property to be compensated with money damages, which is still what some of the people in Bensonville are aiming for.
Thank you.
But aside to further go a little further, aside from the money damages, we have seen some precedent. There was a lawsuit out in LAX where they were fighting the additional runway coming in. Now that was a long and expensive fight, but it did result in a settlement that ended up, giving the residents some kind of mitigation relief from what otherwise would have been more plane traffic over their heads. So anything's kind of possible, I guess, if they get to some point. The city is the owner, the city's the defendant, and the city's the owner of the airport. So, what they could do with the approval of the FAA and come into some type of settlement, hopefully this opens the door and gives some leverage to those residents, and we could maybe use it as precedent going forward too.
So, non-lawsuit question for you, and more of a comment. I was at a function this weekend with somebody who's recently been impacted by some of the Fly Quiet stuff that's going on. Has there been any discussion during any of this about, his complaint was, he understands we're close to the airport, you're gonna have airplanes at certain points in time. But to have them like that 8 to midnight shift, and then the same area gets hit 5 to or 6 in the morning till 8, really gives you a limited amount of time you can sleep if you're that impacted. Is there a way to, at 3 a.m., switch to a different runway, and at least you might get hit early at night or while you're trying to go to bed, but it won't wake you up in the morning, or vice versa? Has that been discussed at all, or?
It's certainly things that we've been pushing for, and various similarly situated communities have been pushing for. The main issue, and I did want to bring this up, at the ONCC, at the last ONCC meeting, there was a discussion and a vote on the Fly Quiet 3 rotation. FAIR was instrumental with Park Ridge's help in terms of trying to get some kind of mitigation measures. What they came up with is, what we'll do is we'll rotate the nighttime traffic and use different runways throughout a different period of time so that no one community is getting creamed every week, so that there's some kind of reprieve. What they've been doing, though, without really a lot of community input, they've been coming up with the Fly Quiet 1 rotation, Fly Quiet 2 rotation, and now Fly Quiet 3 rotation. Park Ridge voted no on that one because we don't think it's the right mix and disproportionately affects Park Ridge. So the discussions are being had, but we still need to push them to get the right mix where our community and other communities around here are not getting hurt as often as they are by the noise. I will like to say, with the help of Mayor Maloney now, thank you for coordinating with District 64, and we were able to vote together, Park Ridge and District 64, no on this Fly Quiet 3 rotation. We're going to be coordinating more with our District 64 representative to the ONCC. We have also approached District 207, which surprisingly is not a current member of ONCC, but we have asked what they need to do to become a member, and we've approached some board members on District 207. They need to sign the intergovernmental agreement, and they can then be presented as a potential member subject to a vote by the full ONCC. So we've gotten some interest there. We're hoping to get 207 on board, and we're going to be coordinating with them in District 64 and trying to get the type of things that you've been talking about, Alderman Moran, to see if we could push for that. But I do want to give a plug. What we need to do is, everybody listening, is if you are bothered by this, reach out to your federally elected officials, reach out to the ONCC, go to the City of Park Ridge's webpage, search O'Hare issues in the search box, and you get to our page, you'll get all the information that you need to lodge a complaint or to talk to your federally elected officials who can do something about this and should do something about this.
Charlie, do you have something?
The new rotation has caused some complaints from residents in my ward as well. And one of the questions that was posed was why in other communities, I think they have kind of they come in higher and drop, right before the airport, whereas here they seem to be, longer and lower. Is there any accuracy to that? And if so, is that something that might be, something we can bring up for discussion?
It's definitely is a source of mitigation that is used. If anyone's flown in and out of John Wayne Airport in Orange County, they take those kind of measures both in and out on kind of a steep descent and incline out. to reduce the noise around the area. The difference there is all of the area around that airport is owned by Orange County. So here we have a stubborn, to use a kind term, owner of the airport that's not willing to be a good neighbor, and that's what we're pushing. But that's certainly something that is available, would need to be approved both by the city, by the owner of the airport, the City of Chicago, and approved by the FAA. But you're right, since it's used at other airports, we don't see why it shouldn't be used here. Also, the fact the headings is another issue, which we brought up at the ONCC, at the last ONCC meeting. So in addition to rotating the runways, they should also make sure that the headings are such so that we're not getting unpredictable noise, which is what we're getting. They're coming out, taking off to the east, but then they're immediately starting to turn over Park Ridge, and it kind of leaves us with, okay, we thought this runway heading straight east was in use, but we're getting noise now out to the northwest. So it's something that we continue to push and hopefully can get some kind of help with that. But again, I want everybody to reach out to their elected officials if you're impacted by this, by your federally elected officials, and tell them that it's something that you want them to work on.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Thank you guys for coming in. And again, just remind us, when is your next meeting?
Be the third Wednesday of July at 7 o'clock here in council chambers, and we meet every other month. So it's July 19th. Thank you, Alderman.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Historic preservation, Alderman Schubert, anything additional?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Procedures and regulations, Alderman Wilkening.
Request to waive first reading and approve modification of 12-6-20 to the municipal code regarding Bassett training. This was this was added.
Second.
To be put on by, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
The mayor asked this to be put on the agenda, so I'm.
Thank you. And I'll actually,
So this was something that came up with one of the new, I think it was a grocery store that asked whether or not they had their sellers, their cashiers had to be Bassett trained. And Cheryl had looked at the liquor code, and there's nothing in the liquor code about Bassett training except for temporary licenses. Now, under state law, anyone that's a server, so if they're actually serving or they're checking IDs, they have to be Bassett trained, but we didn't have language in the liquor code. So we thought it would be helpful to just reference the state Bassett requirements, have that in our local liquor license ordinance so that people that come in for the local license understand what the requirements are. So it's more of a housekeeping.
we're not adding any additional requirements to anyone, that these were already there.
Right, they're a state requirement, but it wasn't referenced in our local code, and it did create some confusion with one of our licensees. So we thought this cleanup and housekeeping would be a good idea.
And just to provide some background information, that we're departing a little bit from normal operating procedure. Typically, this would go to PNR, the committee, and then it would go from there to a council meeting. I think I sent an email to everybody kind of explaining why I was coming here tonight, just because it was kind of more of a housekeeping issue than anything else. It's not controversial. It's not adding any requirements to any of our applicants. And if we didn't do it this evening, it wouldn't be until our next, we would have to do it at the end of the month, and then meetings in July and whatnot. So again, we're departing a little bit from our standard operating procedure, but again, I didn't think it was very significant. So questions? Yes, Alderman Maladosian.
I guess a question for the city attorney, and then more of a general question about the waiving the first reading. Does that have to be in a separate motion, or can that be combined with the main?
From a legal perspective, you can do it either way. Mayor, I don't remember, it's been a while since we've done it. Just practically, but legally you could do it in one. The only reason to do it in two, if there was a concern about waiving first reading, you wouldn't want the ordinance itself to fail. So, you know, it might, from a practical sense, it might be good to have the waiver first in a motion. If it failed, then you would just be approving it on first reading.
So that goes to my second part, generally, I'm opposed to waiving the first reading, just, in fairness to the public and the ability to respond. Is there a sense of urgency that we chose to waive the first reading, seeing as how we already have, the state law providing?
Well, I think the purpose in waiving the first reading was to start and finish it this evening, as opposed to passing the first reading tonight. The second reading would then be July 10th. So, and since this is already a requirement, but it's confusing, the thought was just to clean it up sooner rather than later. And again, it's not adding any additional requirement to any applicant, but it does potentially clear up some confusion.
Okay.
So that's why. That's the only reason why, Charlie. Yes, Roger.
So question for the city attorney. With this Bassett training requirement, do we know if this was added by the state when they changed their happy hour laws in the summer of 2015?
It wasn't added. They did modify the Bassett training to make it a full state requirement. So I think, most local governments in their liquor codes already had Bassett training requirements, and the state at the same time as the happy hour. I think it was more of a making it applicable statewide. I don't know that it was an added requirement, because I think that it was all, the training programs were already set up.
Yeah, because I know we had just finished updating the liquor ordinance right before that, and then they changed the happy hour laws, so we had to go back and modify it. And I'm wondering if that additional modification is where we
It could have
didn't put
been.
it out more fully based on what the state said.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
there's nothing too concerning about not having it, from a legal perspective, not having it in the local liquor code, because it's going to apply statewide anyway. The fact that it created confusion for a local licensee, I think it's worth just making a reference. We're not putting in all of the regulations, we're just referring to the state law, so.
Any other questions? And Charlie, I get your point too, because I'm not necessarily in favor of waiving second readings either, or first readings, I guess, in this case, rather. But again, given the nature of what this is, it didn't seem to give me that much heartburn, but I agree with you on principle. We'll go out to the audience. Any questions or comments from the audience on this matter? Seeing none, back to council for final comment. Seeing none, roll call.
Okay. Alderman Moran,
Yes.
Alderman Melissus.
Yes.
Wilkening. Yes. Schubert.
Yes.
Meladosian.
Yes.
Bazooka.
Yes.
And Joyce.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Gail? You good? Alderman Wilkening, anything else in PNR?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, thank you.
I apologize.
Public Works Committee, Alderman Moran.
We have two items that are on this evening's agenda. One was pulled off consent. I'll start by making a motion to approve a purchase order for one 2017 Ford Escape S to Curry Motors Frankfurt, Inc. in the amount of $18,557.
Second.
Thank you. Director.
This is just replacing the car that was totaled, and it's used for inspections, as I said last week.
Thank you.
Any questions? Seeing none, out to the audience. Any questions or comments from the audience? And back to council for final comment. Alderman Mazuka.
It's on the dissenting vote. I'll just lay out my reasoning. At less than $5,000 a year from a mileage standpoint, this is replacing a very lightly used vehicle. I would much prefer to see us explore the use of pool cars for duty like this, or explore the use of the unused city engineer vehicle that hasn't moved, seems to have not moved in a very long time outside the window here. And just in general, I don't think we need new cars for every city employee in every role, and certainly not for a role like this where all the miles are small per year in town, and there's nothing particularly special about the vehicle in question. So I'll continue to vote no on this and hope that Next time, city staff will look to some other options that might be less costly than buying new cars. Thanks.
Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Alderman Melissus?
Yes.
Alderman Wilkening?
Yes.
Hubert?
Yes.
Milladosian?
No.
Mazuka?
Yes.
I think my missed one. Okay.
2 noes.
And a
I
yes
believe
over
a
here,
yes.
please.
And I went
Who
early
knows?
again.
No Milladosian, no Mazuka. And Joyce?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
And I'll vote yes.
Alderman Moran?
Yes.
Also? I should not forget you. Okay. It's 5-2. Motion passes.
Still away, John.
All right, and this one was pulled off by Alderman Melissus. I'll make a motion to approve a purchase order for 2 riding mowers to Russo's Power Equipment, Inc. in the amount of $15,790.
Second.
Thank you. Alderman Melissus, would you like to speak to this first?
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This actually came by way of a suggestion I received from a resident who's here in the audience tonight. Thank you to her. And I thought it was worth at least asking about it and maybe exploring in the future. So the suggestion was, why do we, have we ever looked into entering a shared services agreement with the Park District, especially in something like this, considering I'm sure they have a lot more grass to maintain and probably have the equipment, and whether we would be able to have some savings by not having to buy and maintain our own and just have the Park District kind of take care of those for us. I mean, I don't know how many, what the areas that we're talking about that we use these on, but I thought it was worth asking and maybe exploring. So I guess I'll turn it over to
Wayne, can you?
We have looked at that before, and matter of fact, most of our grass cutting is outsourced right now. We get a really good price for that. I think 56 acres are outsourced cul-de-sacs and islands. These are just for the library. Different areas we do the upkeep of the public buildings out here, and they last a very, very long time. And to be under the mercy of the Park District, who has, I think, 300 employees, I think, at one point, and they have all these areas they do, we like to get our stuff done on a continual basis and keep up with things. It's the same as if we were to share with different agencies on, let's say, our streets. It's nice to have our ability to control our own people and not worry about, well, they'll do them now and not 6 months from now. So it's kind of the same thought pattern with this also. These lawnmowers last a long time because of the use they get.
Yeah, John.
Follow-ups to that, because I don't think it's a bad inquiry at all. But I know that the amount of land we use and the 2 mowers we have going in the summertime, you know, basically figure most of spring, summer, and fall, how many days a week are Brad and his crew on those mowers?
I think they're out quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they keep things, like I said, like, you want to keep the library very nice. It's the face of our city, and make sure that's all taken care of well. And, you know, it's one thing to, if we miss a cul-de-sac somewhere and it grows a little longer, we get that as soon as we can, of course. But we have the ability to cut grass by having lawnmowers. If we didn't have lawnmowers, we're at the mercy of whatever.
So I appreciate that, but, you know, I don't see the equation between that and the streets. The streets obviously are something more essential that we need to upkeep and have control over, but the grass, I kind of see it as it's cosmetic. I understand that we need to take care of it, but I would argue that, you know, that's something we would build into any agreement we would have with the Park District, provided they would even go for it. I mean, we don't know if they would accept it, but that stuff can be written in where we'd say you need to do it X amount of times by this date or whatever, if we were to pay them in return. So I'm just saying, I don't think that's a non-starter. It's an argument, and I understand, you know, those are considerations to have, but if we were to go that way, and if the Park District was amenable to it, we could build in certain things to make sure that we get the service that we require. So we wouldn't just leave it on their good graces, you know, to do it, and whenever they felt like it. That wasn't a question, it was more of a.
Right, no, that's okay, no worries, yeah.
Just to add to that, you know, I like the train of thought, and I actually think a lot of the Park District equipment's very large, and, you know, it's made to cut giant fields. Maybe even the school, you know, District 64 has more of the riding mowers like the ones we're doing here, you know, that it wouldn't necessarily be Park District or nothing. We could definitely try to work with another, you know, another taxing body that represents the same basic group of people.
Mark?
So my experience with my previous work with District 64 was that we had a quid pro quo type relationship with the Park District, and we had fields that they wanted to use, and they were willing to cut. So in return for their use, they cut the grass. So there was no money exchanged. It was nice and simple. I think there's a little bit of a difference here in that I don't know that they have any desire to use the library grounds for their use. So what do we have to offer them as a quid pro quo to keep it simple? I'm not sure we have all that much. So it would be a financial transaction, which gets more complicated. Also, I'm not sure how well balanced their labor and equipment are for the fields that they have. So if we were to add this to them, would they need to buy something to make up for the difference in the acreage? You know, and I'm not advocating anything here, but, you know, we could give them the 2 mowers, they could provide the labor, we'd come out ahead, but, you know, that, and then they could use those mowers perhaps somewhere else. That could be a quid pro quo, but these are the types of brainstorms that take a while to work through. And depending on the needs of what we have right now, it's maybe too late to do this kind of thinking. I don't know.
Late in the season.
I don't know if that's not a question, but.
It's okay. No worries, no worries. Alderman Mazuka.
We move back and forth. these days.
Flexibility.
Yes. Wayne, why are these other areas that, if we're currently outsourcing most of our lawn mowing activity for, what did you say, 56 acres, did you say? Why wasn't this stuff part of that contract?
This is the stuff where we're there anyway. We cut the grass, we take care of the flowers, we take care of the bushes, and it's more of a, the other contract, the outsourcing is just hit and run. And we get a lot of complaints because we've got, you know, low bid contractors and they're running as fast as they can to make up time. So we're constantly dealing with complaints on that, and that's what we do. Now, other areas that we cut that are more like, again, the face of Park Ridge, we like to have our own lawnmowers, we have a 3-man grounds crew, and they do everything from trim trees to, they take care of all the different aspects of snow removal for all the lots and all that during the winter. So all year long, this 3-man grounds crew is being used. So during the summer, they're cutting grass, they're trimming trees. During the winter, they're doing parking lots and.
But presumably, if you had some standards in an outsourcing contract to say, you know, you have to keep it at a certain level, certain service level, you could outsource this and still get the same result.
You know, we put those standard levels in, and I'll tell you, it comes up with the cleaning of these buildings. Every year we're changing our contractor.
Yes.
Because they don't make the service levels. You can put it in there, but in the real world, they just don't do it. And then you're fighting them. And then you're getting rid of them. It happens every year.
And if that happens, they should be on the list where they don't get to participate in future contracts. You'd mentioned also that this had previously been evaluated with the Park District, the idea of kind of an intergovernmental.
You know, a few years back,
option.
we had talked a
Do you know how
little
many
bit.
years ago it was?
I don't remember. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago, we just talked about it.
Okay. Thank you.
It wasn't so much the cutting grass, it was just different intergovernmental type of, you know. First thing was the salt dome, and that was, you know, where we have the salt dome on their property. And as you can remember, the negotiations for that is unbelievable, and it's still ongoing.
Thank you.
Yes, Alderman Melissa's.
So, question for Wayne, obviously judging from the dates of the makes of the old mowers that we have, 99 and 2000, they're old machines. Are they still being used? Are they in Are we using them right now, the old ones, or no?
You know, I wish a mechanic was still here. I think they're still being used, but they're just nickel diming us to death at this point.
I believe, if I recall correctly from the committee of the whole, Mike had indicated that the old ones would be sold through auction. So I don't think we're holding on.
I was just wondering if, you know, depending on if they're still usable, to gauge how much time, you know, the urgency of,
Gotcha.
do we need to vote on this tonight, or is it
Right.
something that I would vote for later or something?
And I was going to make a suggestion, we haven't gone to the audience, so if someone's here to make a comment, we can do, actually, I'm going to reserve mine. So any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go out to the audience. Any questions or comments from the audience on this particular matter, the purchase of the mowers? Yes, if you just want to come, give your name and address if you like.
It's Amy Bartucci. I'm at 530 North Ashland. I just wanted to make a comment that I've been aware of the school district conversations lately, and they are in the middle of talking about buying new machinery and equipment, so it might be worth a look and a listen, because I think that last meeting, it was decided that they'd be voting next Monday. So could be some mowers that might be something that could help the Park District or the city of Park Ridge. But the other thing, in addition to the mowers, but I wanted to mention, there was some conversation about the school district sharing with the Park District. I'm not sure how the conversation went, but sharing equipment. So this is the good time to talk about it. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience? Yes.
Gareth Kennedy, 300 South Cumberland. I think, Mr. Mayor, just one other idea, just to throw it out there, is if there's been consideration of something like a prairie garden or something like a milkweed garden to lower the volume of grass to be cut, also making it still presentable, but also reducing maybe the number of mowers from 2 to 1, and then the number of staff that needed to mow. So just another thought that may be worth considering and worth delaying the vote, therefore, to consider, maybe throwing it to the library board as well, to potentially ask them what their preference would be for the outside appearance of the library. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, back to council for comment. Yes, Gail.
Not everything the Park District does is necessarily a giant field, as you and I know. Perhaps it's worth mentioning. It seems to me that there might be a lot of duplication of services amongst all of our taxing bodies, and since all the money comes out of the same pocket, which is mine and yours and every taxpayer, maybe there's a way we can do something. Might be worth looking into. I think it's a good idea.
It's,
Yes, John.
just to clarify, it's not all the same. There are residents of Niles that we don't represent that are paying into District 64. There's residents in Park Ridge who don't pay into Park Ridge, Park District fees, and there, so I understand it's, the majority would overlap, but it's not 100% duplication.
Yeah,
I understand the machines, that what you're trying to do here, but remember, if you ask the Park District to do more work, they've got to get more labor to do that work. It just doesn't magically, you just do more work with the same amount of people or the same amount of machines. They've got to increase their staff to do what we're giving them to do.
Well, and I was going to make an observation that, and this is why I was speaking to the city manager about, we all recall, or at least most of us were on the council when we went through strategic planning back over the last year, and that is something we're going to be continuing to revisit. We'll be getting back into this year, not full-blown like we did last year, but we're going to be continuing to refresh and tweak what we've done. And this might be something that we bring up during that time, because as Wayne, you mentioned, this is something that you haven't revisited with each of with any of the taxing bodies in quite some time. And it might be worth, it very likely is worth reaching out to them to at least start a dialogue. Not only with them, but also what Mr. Kennedy mentioned about checking with the library board to see, perhaps they don't want it to be just, grass up there. I don't know if they want a full-blown prairie, like what we have at the Park District, but they may want something that would involve a little bit less grass. So there are some things, I think, again, but I do appreciate that what we're voting on tonight are 2 mowers that are old, and we do need some mowing capacity at some point. So, again, I'm not sure if it's worth deferring the vote we have in front of us tonight. That's up to you guys. But I did hear some interesting ideas and things that we probably should be talking about going forward and revisiting, even every once in a while, just to see if there's any, there wasn't an appetite for it a few years ago when you talked to them. Maybe there is now. Somebody had their hand up over here, I think, Nick.
So, yeah, I was just gonna say to the, Wayne's concern about the additional, the way I envision it, first we would have to find out whether either the school district or park district would be willing to enter into this with us. That should be a quick, easy phone call. And secondly is, they would want some sort of compensation, so that's where they would get, they wouldn't do it for the heck of it, at which point we would have to figure out if it's worth it, if what they're asking for in terms of, in return for doing this for us, whether it's, cheaper in the long run than the $15,790 one-time purchase. So, I guess I would like to, because once we vote on this, obviously, we're gonna go out and purchase it, so that ship has sailed. So if there's any chance of us saving this money, I would like to, and it doesn't involve a lot of work, to, at the very least, reach out and see if there's any interest. I don't know if I would do it by deferment, if I would make a motion to defer now.
You could.
And then have it come back in a specific time, the next I guess. So I would make the motion to defer until the next committee of the whole meeting. Hopefully that's enough time, which is,
June 20th.
Are you talking about the next, any committee of the whole or Public Works?
Public Works, I'm sorry.
So that'd be July 10th?
Back to committee.
July 10th.
It doesn't have to. It
Everything's
could
gonna
go to our
July
next.
10th.
Why would it have to go back to committee?
But the next council meeting is July 10th as well.
Right, so the 10th, July 10th.
It doesn't have to go to committee because we're not at committee, Alderman Moran, to your point.
Okay.
We wouldn't have to. And we could do it to, we have a committee of the whole meeting next week, right? Finance, PNR?
Oh, because it's final reading now, so bring it back as final reading again? Is that what you're saying, the next
Well, I
council
guess
meeting?
I'm
If you're
saying
deferring it, that's what would happen.
Right,
we
okay.
could defer it to the next council meeting, which was July 10th. We could defer it to, we could create a special meeting.
That, we have the
Next
special
Monday?
meeting on July 10th.
The next, right, the
Right,
next
right.
voting meeting is the 10th.
Yes.
So, yeah, I would like it to come back then.
So
Or that's the
can you,
motion.
I don't mean to be flippant, can you cleanly make the motion?
Yes,
To defer.
so I make it a motion to defer this motion to the July 10th special meeting of the city council.
Second.
Thank you. Sorry, Nick, I wasn't.
No, it's okay.
Didn't mean to be.
No.
Thanks. So motion's been made, motion to defer to July 10th was seconded. So now we have questions on the motion to defer. Alderman Mizuko.
Wayne, is there any impact? Will they honor the quote if we push this off a couple weeks?
I don't believe there would be an impact on the quote.
Thank you.
Joe? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just want to mention, I'm not opposed to reaching out to the Park District or other partners, but I think realistically, this is a larger analysis to see, I mean, we can reach out, and there may be interest in partnering up, but then what's the financial impact of that agreement? What happens to there's this cost, but then are the payroll savings, is that a hard savings to us or a soft savings? Does payroll leave the city as a result of foregoing this work, or is it redeployed in some way? I'm not sure that if we offload this piece of work, we may not lose a full body or multiple bodies. Maybe we will, but it's a larger analysis. So I think realistically, we can reach out, and I would think that they'd be willing to sit down and talk about it, but I don't think we're gonna have the full-blown analysis of how much cost comes out of the city, how much cost comes back to the city from the Park District, and what that agreement kind of frames up by the 10th of July, just so everybody's clear. So I don't know how long we can push the quote or how long we can live without the new equipment, but I would think that this is gonna take longer than 2 weeks or whatever, 3 weeks to get, like a real picture of how this would impact the city.
Okay.
question for the city manager. By July 10th, though, you'll have an idea of whether this is completely out of bounds or if there's a chance that it could work.
Well, I mean, if we reach out to them and they say absolutely not, then, yeah, we've got a clean answer. If they say, sure, we're open to talking about it, then we have to figure out how much time and effort is spent by the city to do this specific piece of work. And if we offload that to the Park District, what do they charge us? And does our payroll reduce accordingly or more or less, because it may just be a redeployment and, it might be worthwhile. Maybe we have pent-up projects that we can redeploy personnel to
I need
do.
these bodies in the winter, remember that.
That,
I need them.
sorry, that was gonna be my concern with this whole conversation is Park District, when they staff up to cut their grass, it's more of a seasonal thing, and I think some of them are actually gone then in the wintertime and not there. And we need these guys in the winter. We already have somewhat of a, I don't say skeleton crew, but we lost some bodies a few years ago that we haven't replaced, and those guys are important when it comes to snow plowing and some of the other issues that the citizens see and get vocal about if it doesn't happen in a timely manner, to not just eliminate, let's say we do eliminate some payroll and get rid of a body, that person, hypothetically in your mind, you think, well, he could get a job at the Park District because they're gonna need a body. But it's not the same type of job, it's not gonna help us in the wintertime and could create other unintended consequences that, again, it's a much deeper analysis than July 10th.
Mark?
Or those people who are no longer mowing lawns could do higher value-added things for the city during the summer and would not go anywhere in the winter. They'd still be around. That's a possible outcome of this as well.
Like what?
Sewers.
I don't know. Is lawn mowing the only thing that Public Works does during the summer?
We have
God, I hope not.
plenty of things they can do constantly. We're always behind
what I
trying to
thought.
catch up.
So I think the upshot is, from the city manager, is that we may not have a complete view and a complete answer to the question, but we should have something. We could have something for feedback. So,
And we're talking to Park District and District 64, or are we just going to Park District? Yeah.
If we're gonna really do the analysis right, I think we would probably look at a third party too. The folks that do that we outsource to now, we should get a view of what that would look like from them, so that we can, so here's the city's approach to it, here's the other taxing districts and their costs and savings and the net, and then a third party. And, if we're gonna really look at it, I think you'd have to look at all those options to see which one we're better off.
okay. Charlie?
Well, while you're doing that analysis, could we get some souped-up mowers, and maybe we could ask them what they're willing to pay us to do Hodges Park? And look at generating revenue versus trying to cut costs. Mower business.
3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Before the concert
Connecting a slope or two, right? You can-
Just out of curiosity, the depreciation for these mowers is 10 years reasonable?
They last a long time, so yeah.
And we're talking about a $1,500 a year expense here. I think we're gonna spend more time debating this and not giving up the salary, so I'm gonna be voting against deferment.
Okay, we're still on questions. So let me go into the audience. Any questions on the motion to defer? Or comments? Y'all can make whatever you want. Seeing none, back to council now would be comments. Alderman Maladosian previewed his. Anyone else have any comments? Can we do a roll call on the motion to defer? So a yes vote pushes this off to July 10th.
All right. Alderman Schubert.
No.
Alderman Maladosian.
No.
Bazooka.
Yes.
Joyce.
Yes.
Moran.
No.
Ulysses.
Yes.
And Wilkening.
Yes.
Oh, this has been nice, big bag. 4 to 3, right.
Okay, so motion to defer is successful. We'll take this back up July 10th. Joe and Wayne, you guys will give us the full comprehensive analysis, including Alderman Maladosian's souped-up mowers. Anything else in Public Works, Alderman Moran?
Anything from the director?
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
No additional report.
Thank you. Public safety, Alderman Melanosian.
There's nothing on the agenda, but I did want to bring up a topic of discussion. There's been a number of public safety incidents in the past week. There's been a lot of social media, news coverage, et cetera. And one of the things that came up was just trying to understand, perhaps both chiefs can give a brief idea of when do we decide to communicate events going on in the community, whether it be, various levels, a courtesy notice to elected officials. When do we do a Nixle announcement? When do we do whatever, Park Ridge Neighbors Next Door, whatever it's called? I mean, we have various communication mediums. Some are more, smaller audiences. Some are broader. I want to kind of get an understanding of when do we communicate it? To some of us, we don't know what all the events are going on. There's obviously an incident at Starbucks. There was supposedly some sort of victim that was beaten, allegedly due to a drug deal. There's car vandalism, front yard armed, robbery. There was a fire on Prospect with a youth transported for smoke inhalation, and I'm not seeing. And this is all in the last, 50 hours or so. What can we get a sense of when you communicate to the council or to the public, like what the metric is?
And Chief, while you do that, I would just ask, as you explain what, because Alderman Melanosian used some terms that people may not be familiar with. Nixle, Next Door, maybe if you could just explain what those are and how people can sign up for those if they're not already.
Right. And I guess the answer to your question is there exact formula? I don't think so. We kind of make judgment calls every day as to what we're trying to get out to the public. For example, in an accident that's going to block an intersection, we'll put out Nixles right away. That's to anybody who signed up for it, or we'll call shadow traffic. I think we try to use our judgment depending on the nature and the extent of the investigation on what's going on. I've been doing a couple of things. I will email the alderman and Joe and everybody if I think there's a significant event in the community. Now, what's the definition of that? That's kind of my judgment call, is I think that's something you may want to know about, that you may be getting calls about. That's what I try to do. I'm not 100% all the time, because something may be an incident, may not be an incident. It's kind of the roll of the dice based on probably a lot of factors and a lot of social media and whatever. And I trust the judgment of our bosses on the street to notify us through the chain of command as to what that is, what that's going on. Because we had a discussion today, what's the trigger? What's an incident that may be of big significance and you may want to know about. So I don't know that I have an exact formula. I try to do my best, and I'll look at my track record of trying to keep you guys informed of what's going on. But it's pretty much a judgment call on our part and the bosses to try to keep you informed. It's the same with the citizens. Depending on the nature of the investigation, we may wait a while because we don't know a lot of things. A lot of things happen that you just don't have all the information, and it takes time to pull that together. There's the boss on the street, the officers, you have multiple witnesses, you got a lot of moving parts, and the last thing we want to do is give the wrong message. So we may wait a while, or if it's an investigation, we may not want to release information yet till we can grab some people or stuff. So I don't know that I have the exact answer that you want, because I don't know it's not an exact science. It's judgment calls and on everyday things that are happening and what the incident may be. So when we try to do it right, we try to make sure we're making the right decisions. It's not always 100%, and a lot of times the bosses on the street are trying to figure out what's going on and should I call or should I not call, and whether it's going to be significant. So,
Chief Sorensen?
Yeah,
fire's perspective, most of those events had a police involvement or potential criminal element, so fire will not comment on them. We've got a long relationship of not commenting on anything that they're involved in. In other words, we wouldn't want to jeopardize anything that they're doing. So, and then I think the only one I heard that we would have possibly commented on was a fire, and I think even that involved a juvenile or something like that, so we don't comment on anything that could violate any privacy rights, HIPAA rights, so you'll hear things from us, but we're very careful to not interfere with what they're doing or interfere with medical privacy.
Yeah, and the challenge today is that the social media makes everything so instant, and then everybody, puts their perspective out before we've had a chance to find the true facts of what's going on. It's the environment we're living in today, and we try to get ahead of it as much as we can, but it's a pretty tough environment to try to be professional and get everything done right when everybody's shooting out messages about what's going on, and they may not even have a clue what's going on. So I think we do a pretty decent job of trying to balance all that. It's never gonna be 100%. There's just so many factors out there. And when in doubt, you could, give me a call. Give me a call or call. There's always a boss on duty. You can call and ask for the on-duty shift commander, say, what's going on? There's somebody there all the time. And they know that they will respond. If they have a question, they can call me. But if there's something, maybe a minor thing that you got a question about, we don't mind. We certainly don't mind of informing you what's going on. You should know. That's why I try to, and when I get things, give you an update on what's going on, so that if you get calls, you've got something going on. You'll know, have a little background. But
Alderman Moran.
So, to your point about social media and how quickly things spread and everyone has their spin on what they've heard, and my only thing would be that, I'm not saying your department needs to rush to get stuff out, but when you do, I think as much detail as possible and as little room for interpretation as possible whenever you give your press releases and things like that would be very helpful, just to make sure that whether it's a reporter or somebody who, is getting this third hand and goes online with it, the more details that are out there, the better. And, especially on the police side, there's so much instant feedback of, disgust from residents or people. One woman today was regretting moving to Park Ridge because of what happened, because stuff like that, at least to me personally, the more details that we have or that you put out to the public, the quicker that kind of knee-jerk reaction goes away. And that'd be my feedback. It's a different age of 21st century policing, is what you talk about.
It's right, you're right, and we're trying to get the best handle we are. But still, the traditional way you handle investigation is sometimes you don't want to release things, because these things don't happen in a small window of a couple hours. We may be investigating something for days. So that's where it gets a little difficult.
And to go back to a recent case that was inaccurate at the beginning of the reporting was the responding to the shooting at, a shooting victim on Meacham, and before that. So we've had 2 shootings in Park Ridge, the one over off of Higgins, the 2 kids who dumped the gun in the forest preserve, and then this one that were reported in the media as violent crime in Park Ridge that ended up being self-inflicted gunshot wounds from people mishandling their firearms in their vehicle.
Right.
Outside of Park Ridge.
In order to go through the process.
Outside of Park Ridge.
And both of those happened outside of Park Ridge.
Just to clarify, Alderman Moran said we had 2 shootings in Park Ridge. We did not have 2 shootings in Park Ridge.
2 reported
That was not a stabbing.
shootings in
Don't
Park
put that on
Thank you.
social media.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry, Frank, did you have a...
No,
Okay.
John makes a good point, but we have to manage the investigation, and it sometimes takes, in both of those cases, it took days before we got to the truth about what actually did happen. People do lie to us. And they're gonna, the stories are gonna change and evolve until you can find out the true facts. usually the initial information is not always the best information, you know, and it takes time to filter through that stuff. And we try not to jump to judgments too fast also, because we don't want to be wrong, so.
Let me go to Mark, and I'll come to you. Mark, go ahead.
May. I had a question from a resident, and I think from talking with some others that this was on Facebook. For the record, was there an armed robbery at Walgreens on Devon on Friday night?
Not that I know of, no. What is it?
So the answer would be no,
No,
there wasn't.
There not today.
Okay.
Armed robbery at Walgreens? There was one 2
Months
months
ago.
ago?
2 months ago.
2 months ago, and we caught that guy.
Not Friday night.
He just recycled it back to the top.
But this, to the point about how Facebook doesn't always become a very good source of very good news.
On that case in particular, I remember that one, and the way we solved it was because the ET got a print off the counter, which we ran through the system and actually got the guy. So, I mean, it was really good police work, but that took several weeks before we could get all that accomplished.
I remember that.
Then the second question is, who handles press inquiries on the weekends for you guys?
Oh, we come in. It's either Melima, Jogman, or myself will come in.
Okay. The reason I ask is, so the incident that happened last night at the Starbucks, many of us, the first time we heard about it was the WGN News at 9.
Right.
And their reporting on it was based on what we ended up hearing subsequently, more than a little sensational.
It was, they took information from people that were there that had limited information, so. And,
So
and sometimes that's difficult to control, and as I said, the bosses at that time, with their initial assessment of it was what's in the press release. There was
Right.
nobody signing complaints, people were back to restored order. This was not somebody in there, as some of the media portrayed.
Did the press even contact the city to try to find out the official
Yeah,
story?
there were some calls that we were trying to field and get everything squared away. We finally got it all squared away this morning.
Well, this morning, I'm talking about yesterday, when they were deciding what to put on the air and what they weren't going to
No,
put on the air.
not that I know of, not from WGN.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because their story was stabbing in Park Ridge.
I know.
And they put somebody on TV saying, "Oh, things are getting to be much, much worse." And I just sit there and I think, if there was somebody with a badge from the Park Ridge Police Department explaining on camera what actually had happened, you would never have seen a story like that, and you would have never caused us to get all kinds of interesting phone calls yesterday.
Sure, but sometimes
regarding that
sometimes
misinformation.
they're gonna go with a story that they got and make no confirmations. You know,
But that's part of your job, to make sure they get the right one.
Right, but sometimes they're gonna do things that you can't control.
Nick, did you have something? I'll get you.
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to make sure, and I understand this is all a balancing act. You know, obviously, we're, the significant interest of keeping the public informed, and at the same time carrying on investigations that have, you know, criminal and legal implications. And all this taking place in an environment where, you know, because of social media, the internet, news media is under extreme pressure to get the story out first. So a lot of the traditional values of, you know, confirming stories, making sure you got your facts straight, kind of go out the window. And this is just me talking, my opinion. You know, the race is who's going to break the story first, get out whatever, you know, morsel of facts you have or information, and, you know, see what happens. So people take that and run crazy with it. So I think we need to manage expectations too, as far as the city, and I don't want us to succumb to those same pressures. Without making excuses for staff or for anyone, I don't want us to feel the same amount of pressure to just react because a few people went on Facebook and posted whatever came to their head at that moment or whatever they felt that moment. So we need to be more responsible about it and kind of manage those expectations and say, you know what? We don't have the facts. The police will release the facts when they have them and they're ready for them, and that's how it's gonna go. So I do agree that elected officials should have a channel to get some information, and they can respond directly to people that contact them. Because if people really care enough, they'll pick up the phone or email their alderman instead of just sitting on their couch and, posting whatever they felt like that moment on Facebook, because that's easy and it's lazy, I'm sorry to say. So these people, you sit there and you watch them work themselves up in a lather and post 160 comments within 20 minutes. And, we're running around like chickens without a head trying to respond to all this. And I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to. And we need to start managing those expectations and set some standards and be like, we're the responsible party in this. Whatever the police chief says, goes out and says, that has implications in court down the line, that it has implications in prosecutions, and has implications on all kinds of other stuff. So I agree. I know we all feel the pressure. I felt the same way you did. I got the same, I saw the same comments, and everybody's like, what are they doing? The city is on fire, we've turned into a war zone, and.
Not on fire, he'll confirm that. Put out a press release.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, sometimes we need to be like the adult in the conversation and kind of hit the brakes, and I understand that people need information, but we need to be able to be the city and say, you'll get the information when it's time for you to get it, and it sounds kind of authoritarian, but otherwise it just kind of gets out of control and out of hand.
I applaud your desire to be the adult in the room about information like that. The thing I just worry about is that yesterday, a lot of hours
Alderman
went
Mazuka.
by. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry, I'm just doing it because you
Yeah, I
bust
know.
John's chops all the time.
A lot of hours went by, and a lot of bad information got spun out of control. And I'd like to make sure that, to the extent we can, make sure bad information doesn't spin out of control like that, that we're doing everything possible to make sure that that doesn't happen. Thank you.
Agreed. I just wanted to offer another perspective too, like to kind of balance things out.
Yeah, I was looking for you, Gil.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
What you said was right, that people hear of these things, they should call us or email us or send us a text, but as Alderman Mizuko mentioned, well, many of us didn't know about it until we saw it on the news. So it would have been a waste of time. We were out of the loop on that, and we didn't know anything more. The people that would have come to us, we wouldn't have known a thing. I think it was poor timing and a bunch of bad stuff all hit at once.
And I brought this up only, and not to call either chief on the spot for it, I think just to bring light of a number of conversations on social media, perhaps amongst the aldermen, that it is this balancing act. And I don't mind what you said, Alderman Melissus, but right now, I'm more concerned about managing perceptions than I am expectations, because in this social media world, these perceptions are running amok. They think crime is on the rise, and we have statistics to show that crime is not on the rise. And so when you try to get the facts out there, hopefully you can, curb some of it. And I think that, the incident yesterday at 2:30 in the afternoon, that, I don't know, it was around 8:45, a Nixle alert went out. I immediately went to Starbucks, it's in my ward, and was dumbfounded to see nobody there except 3 news trucks. No one from the city, and me in a T-shirt looking unpresentable, did not exactly want to be on the 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock news. And the first thing I did was I searched my inbox for Jogman, Park Ridge, Kaminsky, all these from addresses, thinking, oh, I must have a notice about it. And I think that was one incident. I think, there's been many other cases where there's been a lot more timely information. The only thing I would caution is, while that incident, as extreme as it is by Park Ridge standards, turned out to be really kind of a non-event in many respects. I don't want to diminish what happened, but regardless of what actually to be the facts, whether it be a self-inflicted gun wound that your gut tells you that's what it is and it's being reported this way, or a stabbing that really is a guy who grabbed a knife with his hand, the err on the side of caution of what perception is versus, you're in your mindset of doing the facts of what the charges may or may not be. you know, we really want to know as early as possible, even if it's what is technically a non-event. We're trying to help it perception-wise not become a fictitious event in social media, or at least be informed to tell our constituents when they reach out to us. You know, we want to it's one, you just can't say, well, you know, give it time, we'll see what the facts are. They don't want to hear that. You got to have some counter information saying, you know what, it's not as it's being portrayed, it's not really what necessarily happened. You know, it's an active investigation. Relax, give it some time, and you'll see. You know, even if it be vague like that. But some of the stuff we had, I think, did quash a lot of it on social media when we, you know, were able to, you know, kind of report more details. So thank you for doing your job, and whatever additional communication we could have would be appreciated.
And just to close the loop, Frank, you talked about Nextdoor, and people can sign up for that at nextdoor.com.
Nextdoor, Nixle, those are ways that we get the messages out, so please, if you're signed up, you can go to the websites.
And
get all those signs up.
Nixle is, you're alerted through text message, and the Nixle website says you can text your zip code to 888-777 to opt in, and those, I'm just looking at the Nixle messages I got over the last week. They involved crime, they involved traffic accidents, they involved utility pole fires, things like that let people know areas of town to avoid.
Number again?
3 8s and 3 7s, 888-777.
And what do you text to them?
Your zip code,
Done.
which is 60068.
Got it.
And what's the other, next?
Nextdoor.com, and then you can sign up. You just follow the directions there.
That one I didn't know.
And then we're all well aware of Facebook. Yes, Charlie.
Nothing else under public safety.
Charlie, do you mind if we go out to the audience? I think there's a question
Sure.
from the audience on this. All right, so just come on up, give your name and address if you like.
Nobody told me about it.
Hi, my name is Alice Dobrinsky. I live at 108 North Merrill. I think this is a great conversation for everybody to be having together. It's been really clear the past week, the past 24 hours in particular, that there is not much communication. So I'd like to just go through a couple points that were made. The first is that if I were signed up for Nixle or Nextdoor alerts, would I have heard details of the Starbucks incident yesterday?
No, I can read you exactly what you would have gotten on Nixle, and that would have been at 8:40 last night, a disturbance at Starbucks in PR at 100 Euclid involving 2 subjects. Peace has been restored and no threat to the public exists.
Okay, so there's that, and that would have been before the news report, correct?
It would
That was
have
at
been,
8?
yeah.
It was at 8 something you said, I think? Okay. And then, Officer Kaminsky, I know you mentioned that certain incidents you will email the alderman, but was there an email to them last night about, or yesterday afternoon about Starbucks?
First thing this morning.
This morning, okay.
And if you could direct your questions to me, that would be great.
Okay. Okay, so then at what point did everybody get the details today on the Starbucks incident?
The press release went out.
This morning.
There was a press
Well,
release.
and we received an email from Chief, and then half hour later, the press release went out. And I was already kind of active on social media, putting some of the facts out there for people to see. And then I used a photo, just a screenshot of the press release and added it.
Okay, and so that's where your details came from?
Yeah.
On Facebook today? Okay, got it.
Yep. And then to your point, and to what the mayor just read, what was put out on Nixle doesn't necessarily, it almost feeds credibility to the sensationalized news report, because it doesn't say, so-and-so was, not names or anything, but nobody was transported to the hospital, there were no major injuries, because it let the police, it gets back to my adding a little bit more detail. You have to assume that the WGN News is going to take this and run with it and spin it however they can get as many clicks on their website as possible.
Right.
With whatever headline they can do that with. And, as soon as I corrected on the Meacham incident, I actually contacted the reporter and corrected him that this young woman was not shot in Park Ridge. And he went straight to, and I forwarded his email to you, Chief, and he changed the title of the article. He doesn't want to have a reputation as or ruin his journalistic integrity, but he just didn't know that that wasn't the case.
Right. Okay. So, like I said, good talk. It's true, there's processes in place for a reason. We all understand that, but I believe that it is valid. I can tell you as a community member, and I mean, all you got to do is look at Facebook and just see it blowing up all day long. Like, there has to be a way to address this stuff more promptly and clearly. And I'm sure that it can be done without jeopardizing investigations or, I'm sure that we can all work together to find a solution. If you need help with this, let me know.
But I will challenge you a little bit. I think anyone, if anything, I think we all should have learned in the last, say, year, that anyone relying on Facebook for their news is not necessarily going to have
Agreed.
all of the facts most of the time.
Agreed.
And I will tell you, I'm on Facebook, and there was a, I'll switch topics to one that's not public safety related, but public works related. There was an article posted about what happened here in council a week ago as it relates to flooding and with what we talked about with check valves and flood control systems, and where that conversation went on Facebook, the facts had no bearing on that discussion and conversation.
Right.
Now, could the city have jumped in? And when I say the city, I mean, somebody in an official capacity, somebody myself, somebody not named Alderman Moran. Yes, they could have. But again, I will just tell you, like, the facts were significantly absent from a lot of the comments. So that's just, and I'm not,
Yeah.
I understand. The reality we're in is a lot of people get information from Facebook. We
it's a
can't
different
ignore that.
right.
But I think people need to understand that you're only getting some facts,
Right.
sometimes no facts.
Right. Well, that's what I found interesting today is there didn't seem to be a reputable news article or there wasn't anything beyond anything vague. Everything was vague. But then John Moran had some information, and at first, or at least for a while when I was watching, there didn't seem to be, I didn't see exactly where that was coming from for a while. Like it didn't, it wasn't credited. It was like, you had the info.
Atkins said, well, he's an alderman, he kind of has.
I mean, I didn't mean to say, like, I'm just saying, like, then there was info, but we don't know exactly where it's coming
John
from.
did post a press release from the
Right,
city.
and I'm
which
saying
was
I
also
did.
posted on the city's website.
Right, and I didn't see that because I do not stay on Facebook all day, so I only see what I'm seeing for a second. And I get it, these are, I mean, I'm with you on this, like, I understand, and you guys, we can't all sit there and monitor Facebook all day long. Like, everybody has jobs and things to do, and we can't, I mean, if people want the information, they can go to the website and like they can look at notes, they can come to meetings, and like you can't sit there and like dispute when facts get out like the whole day long.
And again,
I get all
I'm
that.
not saying that people have to come to meetings to get their information. I will tell you, it's exhausting to try and keep up
Totally.
with what is happening on
It-
Facebook.
I agree.
And again, I realize a lot of this conversation is spun up because of Facebook. So, and
Right.
again, I'm on it too, so I'm not saying we're going to ignore it and, well, whatever happens there, happens in a vacuum. Because it's if that's where residents are going, then we need to do the best we can to put
Right.
credible information there at the time we can.
Yes.
That's, so we're
Yes,
not,
and
you
I
are
would like,
not
I would
arguing
like to
at
be,
all.
no, we're not. And I would just like to be the voice from the audience that's not on the council or is that, doesn't have an elected position. Like, I would just like to be that voice too. Like, yes, I agree with you guys. Like, if there's another way to, like, especially with these weird incidents like that, where people are like, what? Someone stabbed and look what's happened in the past week. Like, maybe we will find a way to get that info out earlier.
Right. And there are going to be times, and we can all go back over the last 12 months, where we don't want to rush to put information up.
Right.
The city doesn't want to put, where, as Chief Sorensen mentioned, if there are incidents that really grasp the community but have to do with people's health and things, we've had, Alderman Knight passed away. There are going to be times when we do have to follow certain processes, when it has to do with health and minors and things like that, where we can't necessarily put all that information out right away. And there are many incidents that happened in the last year that qualify.
Right.
But again, you and I are not arguing, and the
No,
city
we're not.
the city can do better in this. I think that's something we've all learned, is that we can do a better job.
Yes.
And we're going to work towards it.
Yes, thank you. We support that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anybody not on Facebook here in the room, just out of curiosity?
Alderman Mazuka.
Yeah, Frank and Mark. I don't know
And
what that,
just one last
I
comment.
don't know
you
what that says, that you two are the only ones out there.
When in doubt, you all have my cell phone number, you all have my home number, call me. I try to do my best to respond to those things. I always don't check the emails as much when I'm sitting home. I still have the telephone, so, just call me. I don't mind. That's.
And Frank, I guess I'm going to take that one step further. I know we're not giving residents your cell number,
Please
but if someone has a legitimate question of whether it's safe to be uptown because they heard about something happening in Starbucks, they can always call the police department and ask the question.
Sure.
Right? They may not get the level of detail because it may not be the right time. We may not know it. There may not be time to release it, but they'll get some answers.
Yeah. We try to get, put whoever's at the post, give them some basic information. But a lot of it's a work in progress. It's not as compartmentalized. These things are a lot of moving parts to them. And sometimes it just takes time to get it all together, so.
Okay,
We really try to make sure we're doing the right things, so.
Thank you. I apologize, I kind of hijacked.
That's fine. And agree with Alderman Moran, when you say like, there was no current threat to the public, like, I think there was the community center, we use similar language.
Yeah.
I think that just instills panic more so than calms fear. So we just have to be careful what we say in those words.
Anything else?
Careful how they interpret.
Anything else?
Includes my report.
All right, thank you very much. Where were we? Finance and budget, Alderman Mazuka.
No additional report, Mr. Mayor.
New business. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved. Second.
I think we have to do a roll call vote for this, so could we have a,
You've already voted on it once.
well, no, we have to do roll call, right?
You have to go roll call to go in.
Oh, we still have to,
Actually go
separate, you want to.
For the reasons stated on the record before.
Okay, but I thought we did that. Alderman Wilkening. Schubert.
Schubert. Say yes.
Yes.
Milladosian.
Second, and yes.
Mazuka.
Yes.
Joyce.
Yes.
Moran.
Yes.
Yes.
The closed session.
All right, we'll take 5 minutes and then come back in closed session.